Okay. I'm a real estate appraiser. I'm a certified real estate appraiser. My company is Appraisal. I live up on San Juan Island, and I run the AMC from there. I've just moved to San Juan Island about 2 months ago, but my dad lived there for about 40 years. My daughter lives there. My son lives in Shoreline. So we moved up to San Juan Island, and now I'm working remote, and that's where I do all the magic from. Let me make sure I can do the buttons right. There we go. Appraisal is a licensed California appraisal management company. We're located in California. I'm located up here. The business office is in California. We've been in business since about 1990. We serve all 50 states. I'm a certified appraiser, boots on the ground. I do appraisals all the time. I'll be doing 2 on the way back, with one with another one of our staff appraisers, and then another one up in Edmonds. Let's see. Caleb was supposed to be here. Does anybody know Caleb? Caleb is with Triserv. Caleb is with Triserv. We are sister companies. We're both owned by the same company. Caleb invited me here today to chat with you guys. I do presentations like this to groups of realtors all the time. I found it really interesting, and we're going to go over a lot of real fun stuff today. But I found it interesting that you guys said you fight appraisals, and I found that really interesting because I don't know if I've ever fought a realtor. So I found that pretty interesting. We'll go through a bunch of different things. We'll see if you still feel the same way. Certainly everybody has their own position that they're working from. But I know for me personally, I don't like to fight anybody. I like to work with people. And whether it's a realtor or a lender or a seller or a buyer or whoever, always happy to work with people. First thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about home price statistics. That's what I deal with every day. We're going to talk about 2 sections of statistics. One is a little bit bigger, higher view, which is going to be the Olympia Lacey Tumwater MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area. And the other is just Olympia itself. This is the MSA. So when you see these statistics, which by the way, this is the first time that I've used this new service. So I think it's real great. It goes at the MSA level and then down to the zip code level. So you're going to see the MSA is going to be this area shaded right here. And this kind of is a high-level overview of what's going on right now. The 1-year home price index forecast is -2%. That's what everybody is saying. All the people that put these statistics together. It's a company called House Canary. Has anybody heard of House Canary? House Canary is a company in San Francisco that I work pretty closely with. They do statistical data. They do a lot with rental properties and projecting values with rentals. They do ABMs. They do all kinds of stuff.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Your map, your data is from Thurston County. And we have a lot of rural areas that are not in the city. So is that a real rendering of original modernization?
That's the MSA. That's what the MSA covers, not just the MS. Yeah, exactly. And so the MSA itself is called Olympia Lacey Tumwater, but it encompasses everything that you saw.
So there's a lot of price variation though.
Yeah.
Far edges of our county.
Yeah, exactly. But it covers all the shaded areas that you see there. So prices are expected to drop a little bit, and you'll see that here in just a couple of minutes. The 1-year risk of decline is high right now, is what the statistics are saying. The current median list price to sale price ratio is about 100%, which is interesting because normally what we would see as an appraiser is if property values are getting ready to decline or are starting to decline or are declining, we're usually seeing demand decrease, correct? And you would expect that there's going to be a lower list price to sale price ratio, but it's not. that's kind of a surprising number. I think there's still a pretty good amount of demand, which is really, I think, driven by the lack of inventory that we're seeing out there right now.
So this is specific to this MSA.
Correct.
Because nationally, we're saying prices are increasing 5 to 10% this year.
And you'll see that when I start to narrow it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is the projection.
The reason I bring this up is like Dakota is falling. The rural areas out there are not getting the demand like the inner city, so our prices would be.
Yeah, that could be.
Actually.
Yeah, so that could be putting pressure on things. The median days on market is 36 days. Let's see, we've got 705 listings on the market as of about 3 days ago in the MSA. About 2.4 months of supply, which really isn't that much. Historically speaking, the median price is about $570,000 almost. Price per square foot about $285, and the MSA is expected to grow about 0.25% this next year. So that's kind of the overview of the MSA. Interestingly, this kind of shows a 4-year analysis of how many homes are on the market. And you can see how, and we know this, I know this as an appraiser because I deal with it all the time, you guys do. The markets are cyclical. We see the markets change and demand changes every year. But look where we are right now. We're at about 30% less than we were at the same time last year from the number of homes on the market. And everybody kind of feels that, right? Yeah. Okay, this is average days on market. Skyrocketed going into the first part of the year, and then dropped quite a bit, and it's been slowly creeping back up. And so we're about 36 days on market right now for the MSA. Prices have been relatively stable, going back about a year and a half, maybe a year and 4 months. Stable to slightly increasing. And again, a lot of this, even though we've had interest rates going up quite a bit, a lot of this is still driven by high demand, even though interest rates are real high. People still have to move for a lot of different reasons. People get married, people get transferred. My father passed away in February, and my daughter moved out of our rental into his house. People die. Life still goes on no matter what interest rates are. So that's where you're seeing a lot of the demand is the people that have to move and that are just going on with their lives as a result of whatever is happening. This is current supply. Supply, again, you notice that big bump right around January. That's also when that was a peak in supply. That was also when days on market was the highest too. Those kind of things go pretty much hand in hand. Okay, and this data that you're seeing now, these bars that you're going to see, this is straight from the MLS last night. So this is just Olympia. Remember when I showed you on that one slide, it had the MSA and then Olympia. This is just Olympia itself is what we're going to concentrate on. And this is the number of sales. September, this is to date. And based kind of on my projections, we're going to be about 88, 90, maybe 95 on the outside sales. And you can see going back to September of 2022, how far down we are. That's probably about a 45% drop from last year in volume. Okay. And by the way, there's a PDF of this that I sent over to you, Shannon. And Shannon, if you give Shannon your card or contact Shannon, she'll be able to send it out to you guys. This whole PDF. But noticing what the drop is in volume, Shannon did ask me to tell you guys go out to sell some more houses. She wants you to sell some more houses. Yeah. So just so you guys know. This is the average days on market trend. again, you can see the first part of the year, you can see how high we were. 60 days, and now that's dropped to, I think the actual number is like 16 or 17. I mean, that's not too far away from just barely enough time to let the ink dry on the listing contract. If we didn't, everything's computerized now. But yeah, things are moving really quick. So the takeaway from this is you got to move fast. I just had somebody call me this morning about a property, a fixer-upper property that another loan officer had called me about yesterday. Demand is so high and there's so little inventory. I'm getting people calling me saying, "Hey, is this going to go FHA on the same property?" Multiple people are calling me on it. I'm the appraiser. So you can see, if you do have something in mind, one of your buyers, there's Caleb. Hey, dude. If one of your buyers, if you're representing the buyer and you're out there looking, you have to get across to them that you got to pull the triggers. If you find what you want, if you find that property that fits the bill for you, you have to get it now. Otherwise, somebody's going to get it. This is the average list price to sale price ratio. This is something that I look at as an appraiser. This gives me an idea of what demand is like, and you can see this is pretty normal. It's inverse from, say, days on market, which is also an indicator of demand for us. So January was the low, then it peaked in May, and it's been declining a little bit ever since. That's normal. That's what we see all the time, and we're still just under 100% list price to sale price ratio right now here in Olympia.
One of the things that's a little deceptive about that graph is that even though they're selling 100% list to sale, there's really, really sticky concessions.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So many of these that.
Yeah.
But the actual contracted cash basis isn't really 100%.
Yeah.
Which is one of the difficulties when agents or loan officers go look and say, "Well, I see lots of comps that support this." I'm like, "Yeah, they all."
Okay.
They all have $20,000 concessions.
Yeah,
They don't
and
actually support it.
yeah, and that's true. So let's talk about concessions for just a moment, because that's actually a whole section of a presentation that I do, and I'm not doing it today, but I do talk about that. Concessions over the past year and a half, when interest rates started taking off in January of 2022, all of a sudden everybody's trying to figure out, okay, how do we get these deals done? And so now you were starting to see buy downs. Buy downs became real popular. Other sorts of concessions. Now, as appraisers, we look at financing concessions. That's something that we really look at. Realtors have a little looser definition of what a concession is. A concession could be a condition issue. You reduce the price because it needed a new roof, and that's what we see in the comments as a concession. So to appraisers, that's not really a concession, that's a condition issue. But concessions, what we look at, what Fannie Mae tells us we have to look at, is we're looking at, did that concession, that financing concession, have an impact on the ultimate contract price? And I'll give you a good example of one yesterday that I reviewed. One of our appraisers did. It came in $4,000 below contract price, and of course everybody lost their minds. But it was listed for, I want to say $679, sold for $693 with a $15,000 concession, financing concession. Sellers paying closing costs and points and some other things. And so what that tells us as appraisers is somebody raised that contract price to make up that difference. And when we called the agents, that's exactly what happened. But that doesn't mean the appraiser is going to hit that number. So be careful when you're raising a contract price to account for concessions, because that takes it a little bit out of the market sale arena, correct?
I had one yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
That's assuming though that the price was above market.
Or listed at market at the time, and then they raised it
Yeah,
above.
but the one
Yeah.
that's called not
Yeah.
market.
And some of that can be determined based on the days of market. I had one just yesterday that I wrote. It was listed for 380. It was on the market for 20 days. The average is 6 for correctly priced houses. And then it went under contract for 400,000. That's 20,000 more with a $25,000 concession. There's no way that can be supported by an honest, in my opinion, by an honest appraisal. I had 11 comps in there. I'm waiting for it to come back for reconsideration. Because this lender does every time.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind when you're writing your contracts. And thanks very much for helping out here, because that's how appraisers look at concessions. That can have a big impact on your escrow. So thanks for bringing all that up, guys. This is the average sale price trend. Realtors tend to look at sale price. I tend to look at price per square foot as an appraiser. But you can see property values have generally been increasing. We're seeing a little bit of a drop here in September. But they go up and down. It's a little bit of a roller coaster. But overall general trend, again, since the low point in January-ish or the end of 2022, this has been increasing. Most appraisers should be putting on their reports increasing property values right now, at least according to this. Sometimes we see stable. They'll put that. The biggest issue for a lender and for a realtor when you're in contract is when an appraiser puts declining property values, because sometimes that'll change the underwriting criteria. You probably know some lenders that will reduce the LTV by about 5%. If it's a declining, if the appraiser puts declining.
But
Yes?
I thought you said we were declining in your first slide.
No, there's a projection of a 2% decline for the next year.
Okay.
Not right now.
Would you mark an appraiser declining?
Not right now. No.
Even just 0.2%, would you mark
Yeah,
it? Are we gonna, question is, are we gonna start seeing that box check? That will screw up a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the best question. Maybe. I mean, there's only so much that we can
For
predict.
the new weeks,
Yeah.
and then we're in the last track. Yes, everyone will have to restructure the.
Yeah, most appraisers though, if a property is within, if market values are within a narrow channel of, let's say, 3 to 5% over the course of several months, they'll probably call it stable.
Okay.
Most appraisers, if you're going to see like here, we see a couple declines, a couple increases, a decline, an increase, a decline. Overall, the trend line, which is the red line, the trend line is showing increasing. But if that turns around and we say have, 3 to 4 months of declining values, then you may see appraisers start to put, check that declining box.
Question about that. So when you guys are doing this data and you guys are basing your numbers, are you looking at the homes that are selling? Because that's going to be impacting the price. So if all the $400,000 homes are all selling, or $900,000 homes aren't selling, you're going to see a drop in their average price. Do you guys evaluate and look at that?
We look at individual markets and market segments when we get to the market approach on the appraisal. This would equate to the first page of the appraisal, which just talks about the neighborhood, the global market in whatever neighborhood we're looking at. And there's going to be, I think, this data here includes, I think the lowest prices I saw were in the low 3s and the highest were at 2, for all of Olympia. So that's what this includes.
So do you have a set number when the market is going up? Because I've had this problem, I don't feel like they're giving appreciation from the 3 months of the comps to the 3 months now, and the market's been going up. Is there a number that then you can add value to the home you're appraising due to that? Is there
And that's,
formula?
and we'll talk about that a little bit when we get to value appeals, because that's probably the first place that you should look is on a value appeal is, has the appraiser accurately identified what's going on in the market and reflected that with the comparables and the adjustments to the comparables. That's probably the number one issue when it comes to a value appeal. And appraisers are required. What you see here, all this data is as of closing dates. Appraisers are required to make what you're referring to market condition adjustments. A property that sold 3 months ago versus where things are now. based on the contract date.
So is there a formula that you're gonna go over with us later?
Well, I mean, the formula is really just where properties, let's say your comp sold here, okay? That's at about $540,000, okay? Let's say the comp sold there, and now over here, this is where we are currently at $580,000. So the simple math is 540 divided by 580, that gives you a percentage, and that's the adjustment that you make to the comparable,
Okay, 'cause
a positive.
I have looked at lots of appraisals and I feel like that's a really subjective.
There are appraisers that do it different ways, yeah.
Yeah, you just,
Yeah, there is
six
no-
numbers in
There is
There's-
no required one way for appraisers to do this.
And I had two different supervisors, when I went into the industry. One absolutely always applied market conditions adjustment. I don't like his methodology, but he did. The other one never did, because he said there's never data that is sufficient to merit an adjustment, which is nonsense, which means if he's appraising, it is literally voodoo magic. Oh, I guess I'm gonna reconcile towards the
Yeah.
top. Come on.
And he's teaching people how to do that.
Oh, yeah, he knows art.
Yep.
Probably not his name.
Okay, now, this is the average price per square foot trend. This is a little bit different, same data, but looking at average price per square foot. As an appraiser, this is what I look at. I might be tempted, we've got 3 months of declining prices per square foot. I might be tempted to say we're in a declining market. I'm not there yet. But it's on my radar as an appraiser. Every market's different. There's still some markets that are definitely going up. And again, this is showing from the beginning of the year, increasing up until June. And right now, declining values, declining prices is normal. It's normal for this time of year. We're seeing that, well, the switch from increasing to decreasing happens earlier and earlier every year. Does everybody know why? Because school starts earlier and earlier every year. It used to be Labor Day for me. The Monday after Labor Day when I was a kid. Now I hear of kids going back to school. First week in August. And for you to get the kids settled in the house for at least a couple of weeks before school starts, you got to get a contract, 45 to 60 days before that. So here we are, seeing things start to fizzle a little bit, May and June, and that's where the peaks are now, where they used to be a little bit later. But no, as an appraiser, I'm not ready to call it declining. The vast majority of appraisals that I see, that I review, I see most appraisers being stable to increasing still. Yes.
Why do you use price per square foot? I mean, if most realtors are looking at price.
Yeah, price per square foot for me as an appraiser tends to normalize things a little bit better. It tends to take away it tends to normalize the homes that are much better condition, a much better quality versus the ones that are fixer-uppers or have lots of amenities or very few amenities. It's just a different way of looking at
How do you count for acres? Because I've always felt like, 1,000 square foot, here in town versus on 3 acres.
it. Right.
How do you account for that?
To me, it's a different market, totally different market. So yeah, if I'm gonna buy a house out, who knows where, that's on 4 acres, that's zoned to have horses, I'm not gonna consider buying a house in a subdivision.
And that's why price per square foot doesn't really work on water.
Oh, correct.
So
Well,
You have
if
different
you stay
quality
with
of
only
waterfront,
waterfront data,
different-
you have to stay with the same sort of data. This again is a high level overview of all of them.
Yes.
Yes.
Mine's a two-parter.
Yes.
So you just said that you use the price per square foot, and then you talked about quality and condition of the home. I don't really understand how those are correlated. But the second part is, how do you account for trends like tiny home living where people are willing to pay more to live smaller?
So that's all just part of this data set, because this also includes 4,000 square foot homes on 2 acres. I did limit it to 2 acres. So it includes both of those extremes. What it does, price per square foot tends to normalize the extremes a little more. That's all. That's what that means. When I say quality, that's just one example of something that could be extreme in a home. An extremely high quality home, it tends to normalize that a little more.
It's like setting my belt here, I'm a little more.
Well, you're not gonna do this price per square foot and use a 500 square foot house versus a 1,600 square.
Yeah, I understand from
Yeah.
the outliers.
Yeah, and again, this is high level and includes everything, not narrowed down to what I would use for comps.
He's not looking at a specific one.
Okay, so as a summary from what we just saw, prices are down a little bit from last year. If you go month to month, even though prices were going up from January, prices are down a little bit from the August peak. Days on market is down quite a bit from the February high to about 16 days, but it's up from the lows in June of 22. Let's see. Sales are projected to be down this month about 45% from where they were a year ago, but up 38% from the January low. The average list price to sale prices range has been in a fairly narrow range, but it's down about 2% from the May peak. All metrics are pointing, and you guys know this, to a very competitive market with low relative inventory, which is down about 30% from a year ago. But will prices rise next month because they were kind of going up and going down, going up and going down? So we'll see how things go. That's the one thing our clients always ask us, right? And people always ask me this as an appraiser: what's going to happen next month? What's going to happen next year? And we just don't know. But I will tell you, here in Olympia, when was the last time you guys as realtors, even especially some of the newer realtors here, when was the last time that it was a terrible time to buy a house out here? It's not. You're going to have these little fluctuations, and they're going to happen, all the time. They always have. But it is never a bad time to buy real estate in Olympia. It's just the way it is. Okay, let's talk about a few other things. How to prepare for an appraisal inspection, especially for the newer realtors here. Meet the appraiser at the property. Who meets the appraiser at the property? Let me see your hands.
A lot of liars here.
Yeah, I want, as an appraiser, I want the realtor out at the property. I know we all have lockbox keys, and it's easy just to say, hey, go there. But I want the realtor out at the property, yes.
You wanting the listing broker?
Doesn't matter. The listing agent generally has a little more insight into the transaction itself, and the history of the property itself. But I'll take anything I can get. The buyer's agent has also some great information that I want as well. Yes.
So I was trained back when dinosaurs roamed that you do not meet the appraiser because you do not want to be accused of influencing his decision, because that's a huge no-no.
We were trained.
Here's how I feel about realtors trying to influence an appraiser. Duh! Of course you are. Of course you're trying to influence the appraiser. You guys have a transaction, whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side, you have your clients whose best interest you're looking out for. The appraiser is going to go and is going to go out and be 100% non-influenced. They're not going to allow anything to influence them. We just want information. You had a question back there?
I was going to say, I'm a new agent and I was trained the exact same way.
Yeah, I want you out there because I have questions for you. You guys as realtors, you're still the best source of data for me.
I go when it's a unique property.
Sure. Cool.
Do you think
Yes.
other appraisers have the same?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
No, I asked Caleb.
whether I do this in Idaho, Oregon, Washington, in my whole territory, 90% of the time the appraisers want you guys to meet them out there.
Yeah.
And you'll probably talk about it, even go as far as providing them with information, especially with the listing agent, like what is their value approach
So
like?
I had them call me and want,
Yeah.
do you have any conflict? Can you tell me?
Yeah.
By the way, Caleb, can you introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I got my times mixed up. I'm Caleb Allen. I'm an SVP with Triserv. I actually live right here on the west side. But I handle the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, Caleb invited me here today, so thank you very
Yes.
much, Caleb.
Tony's the man. He knows what he's talking about. So.
And I didn't pay him to say that. All right. No, but getting back to it, I want a realtor out there because realtors are the best source of information for appraisers. We need to know information about the transaction, how many offers were there, if there were multiple offers, what was the range of those offers. It's not always the highest offer that gets accepted. So why did the offer that got accepted, why was it accepted? What were the concessions all about? How long was the property on the market? Did you have to reduce the price? Was it overpriced in the beginning? I mean, there's all kinds of information that I need as an appraiser to do my job properly that I get from you guys. So don't ever be bashful about meeting the appraiser out there, company policies notwithstanding. But I, as an appraiser, I want to see you out there.
You just can't bribe them.
All right, maybe. Okay.
Providing comps, okay.
Absolutely, we'll get to that in just a sec. So meet the appraiser at the property, bring your appraisal inspection package, which is, I'll talk about that in just a sec. Unlock all the doors, make sure the whole property is accessible. If a bedroom door is locked and we can't get into it, we're gonna have to reschedule and come back out at additional fee, and additional expense, and additional time. So make sure that all the doors and everything is unlocked and available for the appraiser to access. Repair those health and safety issues. Fannie Mae, everybody looks at FHA as the primary, they're the ones that want all the health and safety issues taken care of. And the appraiser's gonna call out all kinds of things. Well, Fannie Mae's the same way. Fannie Mae requires health and safety issues to be addressed. If the appraiser sees something that's a health and safety issue, we're required to take a photo of it, put it in the report, and make the report subject to that being fixed. And health and safety issues can be things like exposed wiring, and I put that up here because that's probably the most common one, and that's the easiest thing for realtors to fix or sellers to fix. You know, go down to Lowe's or Home Depot and, you know, get a $1.69 cover plate and stick it on there. Look for those things. The health and safety issues. Two-story house. Okay, two-story house with a master bedroom on the upstairs, with a sliding glass door and no balcony. You know, I've seen it before. That's a health and safety issue. That's a heck of a first step. So yeah, you want to take care of all that stuff before the appraiser gets out there. Secure animals and children. Yeah, we did have an appraiser chased around by a rooster one time in a backyard. I was doing an appraisal one time, and the hallway was like this, and there were bedrooms off the hallway. And so as I'm walking down the hallway doing my thing, I'm taking pictures in the bedrooms as I go by, and a little girl ran out behind me and ran to her mom and said, "Mommy, that man just took a picture of me." And that's a little awkward. You know, and of course, you know, nothing came of it, but you just don't want there to be any misunderstandings. Secure those animals and children. Don't helicopter the appraiser. Don't sit right on top of the appraiser and ask him, "Well, how's this thing gonna come out? Is it gonna make the value? Come on." You know, don't get right on top of them. Give them some space. Let them do their job. I know for me as an appraiser, you're probably the same way. I'm very process oriented, and I do things doesn't matter what house it is, I do things exactly the same way every house. So if I get out of my routine, I'm gonna forget that rear photo. Yeah, see, you're going, yep.
Say, hey, I'm here, open up the house, say, I'll let you do your thing, we can talk when you're done.
Yeah, and a good appraiser, be available for and ask questions at the end. A good appraiser will ask you questions at the end. Just save your questions and have a conversation with the appraiser at the end. Your appraisal inspection package, a fully executed contract. The reason I say a fully executed contract, even though as appraisers we get a copy of the contract from the appraisal management company, sometimes by the time you send it to Shannon, and you guys are sending all of your buyers and contracts to Shannon, aren't you? Yeah? Okay. All right, so by the time you sign the deal, the seller signs the contract. It gets sent to the lender. The lender gives it to their processing department. The processing department works on it. It gets to the appraisal management company, which is me. The appraisal management company gets it to their processing department. They select the appraiser that's going to go out to the property. It goes out to the appraiser. The appraiser schedules the inspection, which is a couple of days down the road. And by the time the appraiser gets out to the property, comes back to their desk and sits down to start working on that appraisal, it could be a week, it could be longer. And there may have been a little bit of negotiation back and forth, an addendum here, an addendum there. So that's why I would say bring the most current contract to the appraiser and fully execute it, because probably I would say 10% of the contracts that we get as an appraisal management company that we get have no signatures. And so by the time they get to the appraiser puts on the brakes on the whole thing and says, stop, I'm not going to finish this appraisal until we get it fully executed.
Yeah.
We get copies of stuff, everybody's worried and everybody's just start sending things, and we've got them. Have you seen them before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if there's an agent there, first thing I do is, what is the current contract?
Yes, what is the contract
I
price?
want to make sure that what I have actually squares with what you guys have.
Exactly.
This has to be like 4 different hands.
A list of improvements and when they were completed. As appraisers, we're required to list when the kitchen was remodeled or updated, when the bathrooms were remodeled or updated. Not only that they were actually updated or remodeled, but when they were done. But there's all kinds of other stuff that could be very important that the sellers may have done to the property that may not be that apparent. Electrical systems being replaced, plumbing systems. There's things that aren't always truly apparent. So put together a list with your sellers and give that to the appraiser, and even put the approximate cost of what things were, because that way everybody's on the same page. How many offers did you have? If you have multiple offers, let the appraiser know that. That has an influence on me as an appraiser on what I am going to interpret the demand of that home was. And it's not always the highest price, right? It's not always the highest one. I had one time. This is a good one. The list price was $1,275,000. The contract price was $1,450,000. There were 6 offers. I talked to the seller with the little old lady, the seller and the listing agent right at the property. I asked them at the end of my inspection, okay, tell me the story. How many offers did you have? What was the range of those offers? And he said, well, we had 6 offers. And the listing agent said 6 offers, and they went as high as $1,675,000, but the purchase price was $1,450,000. And so I asked, why did you take the highest price? And the little old lady, she stands up and she goes, well, I really liked that family. And have you ever heard of the band Train? And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, the buyer's the lead guitarist, and I wanted to sell my home to a rock and roll band. So, yeah, it's not always the highest. There's all kinds of reasons why people accept the offers.
Well, and sometimes the highest ones we know will not please
Sometimes. Or it could be a matter of financing, or there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Comparables. If you're gonna bring comps, myself as an appraiser, I like pending sales. Pending sales show the most recent meeting of the minds between buyers and
I don't know
sellers.
what it was pending for.
I call and I talk to the listing agent
Oh, you
or the
do?
buyer's agent.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I do that. I do that every
I do
time.
too.
And I know that you guys have policies.
Yeah.
I have I'm compiling a list of the people who won't tell me what goes under pending, so I don't call you every time.
But I probably get it 50 to 75% of the
Oh,
time.
yeah, I get about 75% of the time.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely
Which
valuable.
we appreciate as appraisers, because that can be the difference between making the deal and not making the deal. Because like I said, pending sales are the most recent that's the most recent data for an appraiser. Now, we can't use it as one of our primary comparables, comps 1, 2, or 3, but we can use it as a supporting piece of data that helps support time adjustments or market conditions adjustments or anything else. Right. to the comparable. Somebody was asking about market conditions adjustment, and that's where we get a lot of them is from pending sales. That's part of what we do. So pending sales are the best, at least for me. Dated, distant, dissimilar sales, they're not helpful, even if they've sold at the price that you think your property should appraise for. Because for an appraiser, it's always going to come down to the same thing: 3 most recent, 3 most proximate, 3 most relevant sales. That's what it's always going to come down to. Put notes on the comps, and don't be afraid to give the appraiser a comparable that might be a low sale. Maybe the sale down the street is a low sale, but maybe it had an NOD filed on it, or maybe it was a bankruptcy, or maybe it was a rental and wasn't maintained very well, or maybe it was a divorce. Don't be afraid to put that information on your listing that you print out and give that to the appraiser. And yes, you can talk to the appraiser. You can talk to the appraiser about what the property sold for. We have a copy of the contract. We know what it sold for. You can't say, hey, if you don't bring this property in at the contract price, you're never going to work in this town again. All right? We can say that with a smile. Yeah. But you can see the difference. Now, we're all professionals here. I know you guys don't do that, and I'm just trying to demonstrate a point. But we have heard that before. Have you heard that before? Yeah, we've heard that before. But yes, you can talk to. Usually, what I always suggest to our appraisers and what I do myself is I always keep it to the issue at hand. I don't talk about baseball. I don't talk about the Mariners falling out of playoff contention. I don't talk about the weather. I don't talk about anything other than the property itself and the transaction itself. Sometimes that gets interpreted as kind of an asshole, because he really didn't talk about anything and was hurt. But so some appraisers are like that. So don't feel like they're not paying attention, and that they're not friendly. They're just concentrating and they're being methodical about what they're doing. Okay, let's talk about the ANSI standard. Our favorite topic of conversation, huh? The ANSI standard, the American National Standards Institute. This is the new standard that appraisers, as of, get this date, April 1st, 2022, April Fool's Day, Fannie Mae required that appraisers start using this as the standard for measuring square footage on a home. Okay, sometimes it's easier for us to discuss what is not included in the square footage. So these things are not included in the square footage. Enclosed patio rooms, like the type you might have gotten, when Montgomery Ward's was around, the prefabbed patio rooms that you put on the back of a home. Can't include those in the square footage. An appraiser will not include those in the square footage. I've seen realtors include them in the square footage. Accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units cannot be included in the square footage of an appraisal. Okay, and I almost normally see that included in a realtor's square footage. The reason I bring this list up, and the reason it is important for you guys to understand these things, is not to say, hey, I want you to change the way you do your business, and this is how you should calculate square footage. But this is the way that the appraiser is going to look at it. So when you have 4,000 square feet listed on your home that has the single family home with maybe a basement or an area that's below grade and an accessory dwelling unit and maybe another finished detached office or something, and the appraisal comes back and says the square footage is 2,100 square feet, this is why. And that's one other area for you guys to look at when you have an issue with the value. Yes.
You might be touching on this, but what if you have square footage and it's in the county records? How do you take that into account? Versus, like, let's say, you got the ADU and the county is including that.
Yeah, doesn't matter to us. Realtors, buyers, sellers, listing agents, buyers agents, the assessor, the county, builders, nobody goes by the ANSI standard. Almost. Appraisers are required to. So,
Are you, now, when you keep saying ADU, like, if it is like a split level home and the basement is a separate living area, it's still the square footage of the house?
nope, because you just said basement.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so,
Below grade.
Partially below grade now counts
But
as
I
basement.
won't-
If it's just a few inches, it's basement according to Nancy.
Even if
Even
it's
if it's
finished,
walkout?
Yeah,
built as such, brand new construction, does a finished below grade.
Dave,
Walk
I-
out
I'll
below
give you an
grade.
example, on the next slide. Hold your comments till the next slide. We'll talk about that on the next slide.
Curious, it's interesting.
Detached rooms, regardless of the finish, regardless of whether they're heated or not, if it's not contiguous with the house itself, cannot be included in the square footage. Basements, basement is defined as any level, any portion of any level that is below grade. That entire level must be considered basement.
and can I interject really quickly?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that a really well-finished lower level for a split has to be valued differently than the gross living
Right.
area. We get to use judgment on how to value below grade, but it has to be reconciled on a separate line, which means when you look at the form, you might think that an appraisal must have the house. You know.
Right, exactly. Carriage houses, garages, unfinished areas cannot be included in the square footage, even if they're part of the house. Porches, areas under 7-foot ceiling height. There's sometimes ways to work around this, but think of a second story addition, or a second story that's like this, with a peaked roof, like a Cape Cod style home, or an A-frame style home. But the side, the roof starts coming up this way. That portion that's below 7 feet has to be valued separately. Cannot be included in the square
Come
footage.
out to where it goes to
Yeah,
7 and
we
then
do.
you count the middle.
We did, yeah, so there's a certain percentage of the entire room that has to be, at least 7 feet.
Isn't that a newer, like in the last couple of years?
Yeah, started, April 1st, 2022.
And that takes a stupid amount of time for the appraiser.
Yes.
We have to reconcile all the other comps, and we literally look them up to the floor plan and say, oh, that's an unfinished attic as well. And
Yeah.
then move that to a separate
Right.
line. It's-
Pool houses, shops, unheated areas accessed by ladders or dangerous stairs. You know, they're too steep. Attics, that maybe have substandard head height or unfinished. We see these things. This list is compiled from places that I've seen square footage included by realtors in the square footage of their listing, but that we can't as appraisers. So that's why I bring this up. And again, it's not to say, number one, that these things don't have value. They all have value. They all have value. It's just up to the appraiser to separate these things and figure these things out. So like I said, when you have that listing that has 4,000 square feet, but part of it's below grade and part of it's an accessory dwelling unit and part of it is a separate finished office, and you get the appraisal back and it's a 2,000 or 2,100 square foot house is what the appraiser is saying. Now you've got some context as to why that happens. The appraiser probably didn't mismeasure it, but if you're going to challenge the appraisal for any reason because the appraised value is lower than the contract price, at least that gives you a place to start looking and trying to figure that out. So here's the example that I think you were just talking about a portion that's below grade, and you've got what we call a walkout basement over here. So you have an upper and a lower level. The lower level, you see this diagonal line right here, that's the level of the grade. That's the dirt, okay? Anytime you cut into the dirt, a portion of that level is below grade. So in this example, Fannie Mae's guideline, the ANSI standard says any portion of any level that is below grade must be counted as basement area. In this example, maybe the tax rolls, the assessor, and MLS might say it's 2,000 square feet. The appraiser is going to measure it to 1,400 square feet. That's the house and a 600 square foot basement, finished basement. What comparables is the appraiser going to use? 1,400 square foot comps or 2,000 square foot comps? You know, and appraisers are not consistent on that. Yeah.
Sorry.
Appraisers are not consistent on that. You know, this has been a couple of years that we've had this, or a year and a half that we've had this new standard, and appraisers are still trying to figure it out. Now, there are workarounds for these things. There's some things that we as appraisers can do. If you're in an area where the MLS doesn't distinguish between above grade and below grade, the appraiser, there's a few technical things that we can do so that we include everything in the line. But this is, I just want you guys to understand, this is how appraisers have to measure a house.
And then the consistency of how you value these items, they're all checked there.
Right.
They're not considered. And the ANSI standards, you said they were being implemented just this year, it said?
So, I'm sorry?
They were just being, those are just being standardized and implemented across the board.
Last year.
Last year, so-
Last year.
But
A year
coming
ago.
back to how you value all those additional items, is there a consistency for that?
No. No.
Well,
All the more reason why it's good
For you to
to
know.
have us be there.
Exactly, for you to be out of the property. So a good example is, you know, you were just talking about, if I'm doing the appraisal on this property
Yeah,
and I've got another home, you know, right down the street where it levels out and it's maybe a 2-story house, but they're the same total square footage, I might mix and match, you know, what is in our subject property between below grade and above grade, but I'm gonna value the square footage the same. So it ends up being a wash in the end. Not all appraisers do that.
well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say, so let's assume that bottom basement, not basement, bottom area is, ADUs. They split it off, put an exterior door down there and there, you know, it can be an ADU. Were you saying that then gets,
That's still not gonna be included in the square footage, an
Because-
accessory dwelling
well,
unit.
what if we're selling it though, as it could be a continuous home, so if it wasn't.
Well, you can market it any way you want. Now, you have to remember what the definition of an accessory dwelling unit is. So the definition of an accessory dwelling unit is an area that has a bedroom, sleeping area, a kitchen, and a bathroom that is completely independent from the main house. And when I say independent, that doesn't mean detached. That means that you can't go, even if it's attached, you can't go in
So
between.
there's an access door from.
If there's a
inside.
door, it's one big house.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a separate entrance.
Yes.
okay.
So
Yes.
for instance, on the picture that you have here, our house is like that, so we have this where the word lower is, that whole side of the house, there's no dirt, like, it's definitely lower, but there's an exterior door on the side of the house, it's fully, tall.
Right.
Around that side, there's sliders and blocks all the way around. Around the other side, there's a little tiny piece of hill that goes up to the upper level, like, is that because there's any dirt touching one
A
side
good
of it?
appraiser that catches that, any portion of any level that's below the grade, even if it's this much, is that whole entire level is considered basement area. That's what the ANSI standard says.
But the county doesn't say that, they charge you for.
County doesn't, no, county wants their taxes. Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, again, assessors never have used it. Actually, I guess there are a few assessors across the nation that do use this standard. The standard came into being, I think, 10 years ago, something like that, but Fannie Mae only adopted it a year and a half ago. But, again, this is just so that you guys understand when you get in this situation, what to look out for. So, if you have a property like this, that's the type of comps you want to look for the appraiser. Something that has a certain area below grade.
The difficulty with this, with especially that they all have to be split out. You have to have a basement in another line, you have to have a gross living area in another line. And every appraiser who tries to put together a good, competent, solid appraisal is gonna want every one of those bracketed, meaning there has to be something with a smaller gross living area and a larger gross living area, a smaller basement and a larger basement, a smaller ADU and a larger ADU, so that the adjustments always reconcile to the center. A home like that, for me, well, most of mine I'll end up supporting with about 8 or 9 comps anyway. But a home with all those features can get as many as 13, 14, or 15 comps, just to make sure that you're demonstrating that you're that something with an inferior where superior, element gets reconciled to the single. So it's profoundly complicated.
Yeah, it
by
is.
the appraisal.
Is this a little girl or a little boy, little girl?
Little boy,
Little boy,
yeah, sorry.
doesn't like Nancy either.
No, it's really not.
You're sitting there.
Yeah.
May I ask you a question? So you're saying the value are not the same as the rest of this one?
No, that's not what I said. No, you're gonna value it separately.
Separate.
Oh, okay. So
Value it
maybe some of
separately.
it might be less.
It may be
Yeah,
some
that's
appraisers
what
do
I
it.
was-
Oh, it might be less.
That's why I'm telling you about this, yeah, because
If it's
it has to be
less,
valued separately, but some appraisers will value it at a lower rate than the above rate.
and those
There's
some,
no consistency there.
and those some, they're having it 75% of the rate at the normal square footage.
63.2%.
And if you run into an appraiser who does that, the best thing you can supply them is a good, strong conflict of similar.
Yes, exactly.
I was gonna ask, did you say a basement is never an EDU?
No, no,
Okay,
didn't say
because you didn't say that.
yeah, you can have, accessory dwelling unit in the basement, yeah.
But
it'll- it'll actually, if I have an
extra
extra-
It's not,
Yeah.
close it off.
Yeah.
Because I remodeled our basement in King County.
Uh-huh.
And when I put a stove in,
Uh-huh.
they required me to go to this county and get an ADU permit. And it took me 2 years before I could finish that project. But now you're telling me it's not ADU?
Well, no, they, like I said, just like square footage, the county has different, definitions of things
Yeah,
that
they
appraisers.
called it with the full stove.
Yeah.
They made me replace everything,
Right.
put different doors in, all
Yep.
sorts of things. to make
Yep.
it-
All right. How to help prevent a value appeal. This is my list of things that I suggest to realtors to help prevent that occasional time when you might have the contract price higher than the appraised value. First thing is attend the appraisal inspection. Attend the appraisal inspection so that you and the appraiser at least can be on the same page as to what the property is and what the features are. Don't be afraid to give the appraiser information. Come with your appraisal package like I had listed before. Again, you can get a copy of this presentation from Shannon. It'll have that list for you. Prepare a list of the home's features and recent improvements for the appraiser. Be available for the appraiser's questions. You know, sometimes when we get back to the office, all of a sudden we think of something and we got to call and get stuff figured out. Some appraisers have the opinion that realtors won't ever return their calls. And I know that there's nothing further from the truth. You guys make money by picking up the phone. Occasionally we won't get the information that we want, but just the appraiser may call you with other questions later on down the road. Try and avoid subtle pressure statements like, please get the value as high as possible. You know, try and avoid things like that. We really need this one to work out. Try and avoid it. Just stick right to the data. Stick to the numbers. Sometimes those things are going to come across as you're trying to steer the value, and some appraisers will get a little uppity about that. If you're going to bring comps, make them reasonable, similar, and recent. Don't bring a waterfront property for a house that's an acreage property because maybe even they sold at the same price. Make them similar. Bring pending sales, especially if you know the contract price. That's where put the contract price on it. That's always great information for an appraisal. When you submit the value appeal, this is what you want to do. If you're going to give additional sales in the value appeal process, just 2 or 3 good sales is all you need. Don't send any more than 3. 6 doesn't do anybody any good. The appraiser has already looked at all these sales also. Can you really remember any time that you got an appeal where you didn't already see the sales that they're considering? I mean, assuming that they were in the same neighborhood, usually we're getting our sales from the MLS just like you are. So we're most of the time going to see 100% of the same things, unless you have maybe a for sale by owner back pocket.
I was going to say, there have been a couple of those, but
yeah,
I honestly don't really consider those because I just don't think that they received market exposure.
Right.
And so I can't prove that that's market.
Although sometimes be careful because you may see things nowadays sold on Zillow, for example.
Yeah.
that never hit the traditional MLS. And those are okay. I'll consider those. Yeah, I'll consider those, especially if I can get a hold of one of the agents. The sales must be more relevant than the ones that are already in the appraisal. If you get an appraisal back and the appraisal value didn't meet the contract price, and you have a waterfront property, and the appraiser used all non-waterfront homes, give them waterfront homes. And that's an extreme example, but you want properties that are more relevant than what the appraiser already used. Don't duplicate what's in the appraisal. This is probably one of the most irritating things that happens to an appraiser is when we get a value appeal and we go, oh God, here it comes. And the value appeal says, why didn't you use these 3 sales? And 2 of them are already in the appraisal. Had that one?
Absolutely.
Yep, had that one. Because really, all that does is tell us that you didn't pay any attention to the appraisal itself or the process or read it or do anything or any analysis. You're just trying to throw stuff and you're not paying attention to what's going on.
So can I give an example
Yeah.
of what a successful challenge was for me?
Yeah.
I had a manufactured home. It was in 5, and it had a 4-car garage. Like there aren't very many manufactured homes in 5 anyway, so I had to travel everywhere to find manufactured housing. And then how do you find one on a tiny urban lot with a 4-car garage? It didn't exist. I searched and searched and searched, and after a certain point, I stopped looking for manufactured houses that were within a certain percentage larger. And I came back and I said, okay, well, I can value 3 of these garage spaces because I can bracket those. The 4th one appears to be a super adequacy. I can't value it. The agent, and so it dropped out of below the contract price because of that. The agent called me and he said, you know, I got to find something to challenge this. And I said, well, here's the weakness in my appraisal. I recognize that I'm not valuing this 4th. What you need to do is find me a comp that is a manufactured home that is not out in acreage that has 4 cars. And when I put it on the grid, I'll tell you if I see value in that, if I can associate value with that. He got it. He actually got the contract up by the value of that 4th garage because there was a reasonable case that there was a comparable sale that I missed. And I did do a good amount of searching for that. Couldn't find it.
So
Yeah.
can't you do a cost approach?
Lenders will not loan on an appraisal that is based on cost approach.
Okay, because a lot of times what automatic challenges are is they take their comps and they go, this one has a fireplace, this one doesn't, this one, and I know you guys have a list, but they're like -$2,000, +$5,000.
We don't have a list.
Okay, well then good, because I find those really subjective,
It is.
you know, in terms
Well,
of.
all right, I
the
take that.
extra math
Actually, I take that
and
back.
value.
It should not be subjective. It should, because what I do as an appraiser, honestly, I don't make adjustments for fireplaces. I don't make adjustments for dual pane windows versus single pane windows. I don't make adjustments for decks versus patios. That's all minor stuff. That's not stuff that
But it all
a
adds
buyer.
up when we're looking at.
Well, maybe it does, but that sort of stuff is maybe important to some buyers and less important to other buyers.
But a fireplace costs money, so that.
Well, it does.
So it costs extra money to put that in that home, and therefore that home should.
It does, but so does a really high peaked roof, and maybe not all buyers like a really high peaked roof. So here's where I'm going with this. There's a lot of appraisal software packages out there now that use what's called regression analysis, and that's where we take a big hunk of data, 200 or 300 sales, put it into the machine, and the machine tells us this is how much acreage is worth, this is how much age is worth, this is how much square footage is worth, this is how much bathrooms are worth. When you get down to those smaller items like fireplaces and things, statistically, there's just not enough meat on the bone for small items like that.
And it gets swallowed up on quality adjustments once you start making adjustments for the quality of the property. I mean, fireplace is also, it comes attached with, crown mold and other things that are penetration on the house that gets captured in quality.
But your point is well taken, that it is subjective. There are a lot of appraisers, there's no list anywhere, and there's no appraisers that we don't all do things. I do things totally different than the way you do things, I'm sure, and vice versa.
so far we're tracking.
Well, so far we are pretty well, but
my experience has been when we bring these up, right, when we try to talk about, well,
Yeah.
you know what, can we find value here? That, I get a knee-jerk reaction and they get insulted and they
Sometimes.
don't wanna do anything, they don't wanna do.
Sometimes,
anything.
yeah. That's, yeah,
They get insulted, and that's
Sometimes.
actually 8 times out of 10
Yeah.
is my reaction.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does happen. So, I mean, in addition to realtors, and by the way, you have to do this with buyers and sellers too. You have to be psychologists, you know, to a certain extent, and help people through the transactions.
Well, I
mean,
do.
that's, yeah, that's part of it, but
they just say,
appraisers
"Oh,
are sometimes the same way. Appraisers, I've always said, are a funny breed. And,
People
yeah,
are-
see,
they're
yeah,
obnoxious.
we're tagging on that. They are a funny breed.
I was gonna
Yeah.
point out when you were talking about, here comes the value appeal, like that was your visceral first.
I was trying to make the point that that's what a lot of appraisers do, because guess what? Appraisers don't get paid for that.
Yeah,
As a matter of fact,
that's exactly what is going on.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't get paid for value appeals, the time that we spend on them, and when we get one, you know, that somebody sends us a CMA with 80 sales on it, and says, here, this is why it should be worth more, and we gotta go through everything, because the AMCs require that we analyze every sale that's submitted and tell them why or why not.
So
it's
I've
worth it.
had to formally challenge to, in my career, this was years ago, but the last one, because I gave up because of the fact that we didn't win.
The appraiser is under,
I challenged many, I think everyone, and I'm not tooting my own horn, it's just that I've been fortunate, and everyone I've challenged, I think 5 or 6, I have been successful.
yeah,
But I
The-
go through with a fine tooth comb.
exactly, and the appraiser is under no obligation to change the value. They're under no obligation, so that's why you wanna look at a few certain things. Look at the square footage and make sure that does. Unpermitted additions, for example, we didn't get into that, but unpermitted additions are, different appraisers handle them differently. Fannie Mae says if it's similar in quality, similar in appeal, and the market recognizes it, that you include it in the square footage and the value, even if it doesn't have comments. Some appraisers won't. Here's a few other things. Your data should be MLS-based data, but it doesn't have to be, as long as, if you give us something that's sold in Zillow, for example, as long as there's a name that we can contact somebody that was associated with the transaction, that's what we need as appraisers. Don't send us dated sales, don't send us sales outside of the neighborhood. I mean, unless it's something really, really spectacular.
Can that guys go like, how many miles out?
There's no set
There's no
parameter.
set parameter miles?
There's no set parameter. Don't give us dissimilar sales. That's not gonna be helpful. Listings carry very little weight, because they don't have that meaning in the minds yet, okay? Pending sales do have that meaning in the minds. And yeah, pending sales, you can definitely.
Now, if you do submit with a sale that is further than all the ones that the appraiser has already selected, give the appraiser a good reason, like,
Yeah.
this is actually more similar in quality, and it's in a,
Or maybe it has an ADU.
or
It's in
yeah,
a
it has
different
this
neighborhood,
feature
it's
that
a
is
school
similar.
district.
Because an appraiser's gonna have to turn to the bank who is grading it by a bunch of algorithms that we don't get to see, that says that he passed over the most similar, proximate recent sales and travel a ways to find something, because that looks like we're trying to chase
Every
a value.
appraisal that we do, once we as the AMC get it from you, we as the AMC get it and we deliver it to the lender, it goes through Fannie Mae's machine, and the underwriter gets another list of 20 sales, up to 20 sales, that the machine pulls and says, okay, why did the appraiser use these?
Well,
On every single appraisal, unless it's rural and there's not that many
So
sales.
do they differentiate between the neighborhood that is a 2,000 square foot, but it's not quite.
Some
as
realtors
nicely
do,
built,
some-
and
or,
then
I'm
like
sorry,
one
some-
with the design,
Some underwriters do, some underwriters don't.
So I'm just curious about, recently, an appraisal that did not come in at value, was quite a bit less than I expected. And this is a really great neighborhood, but it was a small home in this neighborhood. And the appraiser was really stuck on finding homes of that square footage all over town.
Yeah.
And I said, that one is not the same neighborhood as this.
Yeah.
Right,
This is
and that's
so
where
not-
the appraiser
the
should
quality of
be,
the building.
that's where the appraiser should be making location adjustments. You brought up a school district. Because school districts, for example, can have a big impact on value.
Correct.
And, you can see,
Recent, there's been some recent guidance that suggests that appraisers should not be reconciling with school data.
Oh my God, we have a look at high
Because,
school.
no, I'm not saying that the data may not be there, but it is considered one element of what may be a biased appraisal.
Like a fair
Yeah,
housing
and-
violation.
and which I don't subscribe to that theory.
Well,
No,
Yeah,
I don't either,
To me, data is data, and if a particular school district does sell for more, there's people that may cry about it, that
I know the
may
ones in Tacoma where, oh, this sells for less
Right.
because of
Can
the
we
school district.
go back to what the geographical location could be? Because one that I challenged and actually won on was an out-of-area agent, or appraiser, that came down to our east side over here, which is an area, not necessarily a neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
And he drew a half a mile little square that he got his comps in.
Yep.
Okay, that neighborhood is bigger than that.
Yep.
And they all go to the same elementary school.
neighborhoods can be huge.
And they all go to the same junior high school, and I had to argue that he needed to get out of his little half-mile box.
Yep.
And I did.
Yeah.
So
So-
how do we control what you see as a geographical area,
By
especially when
meeting,
you're out
by
there?
meeting the appraiser out at the appraisal and explaining to them what the neighborhood is, for example. There's nothing that says you can't do that. Hey, I know that we see, when you pull your sales, you want to give those to the appraiser, your comps to the appraiser. I know one of them is 1.8 miles away, but guess what? It's in the same neighborhood. It has the same zoning as the subject, same school district. It's actually a pretty good comp because it's really recent. You can say that. Yeah, that's why I want to meet you there. That's a perfect example.
Tony,
Yes,
just want to be mindful of everyone's time.
last slide.
Perfect.
Last
If you guys
slide.
have questions, you can stay later, but we just want to make sure we wrap up on time.
Yeah, I think this is the last slide here. So again, just to summarize, when you're creating a value appeal, work with the lender, because again, you guys are sending all of your buyers over here, aren't you? Because every company has a specific way of doing their value appeals, and you don't want to, do it the wrong way. Be direct and to the point. Be professional. Give good reasoning and logic when presenting your side. Don't be negative or demeaning. Don't start out your value appeal with, "I can't believe you brought the value in so low." All right, don't start out with that. That's not gonna be helpful. And you can attach to the appeal MLS listings with your own comments, photos of improvements that you think the appraiser might have missed in the appraisal, and list of improvements from the property owner that you think the appraiser may not have caught. All right, and this is me, Anthony Blackburn. Again, you guys are welcome to email me or call me, whether it's my deal or not. I'm always happy to help anybody on anything. Always happy to be a resource for anybody, and I want to thank Shannon for having me here. All right, and thank you guys. Thank you. What's your name? Ben. Thank you very much for chiming in a lot, and thank you all you guys for hanging out here. Yes.
Last quick question after this. Are you sending us a PDF and doing all that stuff?
Everybody,
Yes. Okay.
All right. There you go. Good timing. Thank you very much, guys.